Born with voices like bells, sharp, ringing, impossible to ignore. And then there are those born like lanterns, quiet at first, but glowing in corners most never think to look. Sadequr Rahman was one of those. He was born not with a pen in his hand, but with ears finely tuned to the rustle of rice fields, the hum of bees beneath banana leaves, and the dusty, distant coughing of cities choking on smoke they could not see. He saw stories in everything, in the bend of a river, in the way salt crusted on the walls of coastal homes, in the long pause a farmer took before answering how the floods had changed him. He was not a journalist at first. He was a watcher, a collector of questions. What does the wind say when it blows through the Sundarbans? Why do the children in the northern hills carry buckets instead of books? Who listens when the earth groans? Years later, when the world gave him a keyboard and a deadline, he did not report, he translated. He turned suffering into song, data into heartbeat, silence into fire. He wrote of climate change not as theory, but as something breathing at the edge of the reader's bed. He described the honey collectors of Bangladesh as if they were astronauts entering alien hives, their suits stitched by grandmothers, their courage unheralded. He worked for Mongabay, the business standard, New Age. But these were just waypoints, like stars pinned across the canvas of his sky. The true story was always underneath, and he was the kind of man who would crouch in the mud to dig it out. He once spent weeks tracing the slow, invisible death of a river, not because someone told him to, but because the river had been whispering and he had learned to listen. He followed stories into fishing boats, refugee camps, solar farms, and forgotten rural towns that had become waterlogged ghosts of themselves. His writing was rich, not just with facts, but with the textures of sweat, the scent of charcoal, and the flicker of hope. When others gave statistics, Sadequr gave faces. When others said poverty, he wrote of the hands that wove mats, the shoes with holes, the mango tree that bore no fruit that season. He understood that the soul of journalism wasn't the rush of breaking news. It was the long, slow gathering of truth, like stormwater in a broken clay pot. Some say he practiced something called solutions journalism, but labels were too small for him. He was more than that. He was a bridge between despair and progress, between a reader in a city and a boy walking 10 miles for clean water. He believed journalism could be both a mirror and a lamp, and when he held it up, we all saw a little more clearly. But make no mistake, he was not without fire. There was a quiet, flammable fury in his bones. Not loud, not cruel, but steady, righteous. The kind of fury that made him return again and again to the same issues, long after the news cycle had moved on. He believed forgetting was a sin, and his pen was built to remember. Now, if you stood with him at dusk, you might not even notice him at first. He would not be the loudest man in the room. He might be sitting quietly beside a grandmother under a banyan tree, asking about rainfall patterns, or watching how solar lights flicker on in villages at night. But if you read his stories later, you'd feel like you were there. Dust in your throat, sweat on your back, a strange sense of both sadness and awe. And maybe that's the true mark of his craft. Like Bradbury's Mars, he made the faraway feel familiar and the forgotten unforgettable. They say when a good journalist writes, the world becomes smaller, more knowable. But when Sadequr Rahman writes, the world becomes wider, deeper, more alive. A little sadder, yes, but also in some strange and golden way, full of hope. He is still writing, still listening, still collecting fireflies in jars of ink and letting them loose on the page. And if you happen to read one of his stories some late night, with the ceiling fan whirring and the city asleep, you may hear, faintly, a voice in the wind whispering, "The world is burning, but see, here is a place where it still breathes."